What's up, guys? It's Rob. Welcome back to Rule of Two Review, and today it's my first video in my new series, Rob Theories. So it's Christmas Day, and earlier today I put up an update video kind of discussing a couple new segments and some things I was looking forward to doing with Rule of Two Review coming up soon here. One of those was a new segment that I call Rob Theories, which is exactly what I mentioned in the intro of the video. So I'm pretty excited here. Today's first Rob Theory is a pretty exciting topic that I think is a little bit more relevant than a lot of people might realize, and that is whether or not graphics have lost their importance to the current generation of gaming. So right off the bat, that probably sounds like a pretty tough question to answer, which it sort of is and it sort of isn't, and that's kind of why I've been inspired to talk about this topic for probably a month or maybe even close to 2 months at this point, when the whole theory and the idea of how graphics are important to this generation and if they're as important as they used to be started bouncing around in my head. And I guess my initial gut instinct, which again is what kind of sparked my sort of want to discuss this topic and even start this as my new video series, is no, I don't think they hold the same level of importance as they used to, which is really funny because I do think that a lot of people still hold graphics, at least superficially, to a very high standard when determining which games they like, which systems they want to defend, what side of which battles they want to stand on. And I think people may think that graphics are the hot button topic, or the power of the system is really what you need to be discussing when discussing which system is better than another system, and why is this system a system that I enjoy and the system you like is a system that you shouldn't enjoy. I think that people don't realize that it's not important, even though they think it is, and that's kind of hard to explain, and sort of what I wanted to get to the bottom of today. Again, when you go back through the previous generations of gaming, and I'm someone who've lived, I brought it up several times, I've lived through most of the relevant ones. I started gaming right before the NES came out, so I lived through the 8-bit, 16-bit, 32-bit generations and revolutions and all these different names, into the 3D technology and the 6th and 7th and now the current gen. I lived through all those transitions, and they were all great in their own way. And back in the day, it was funny because it really was when gaming was newer. And again, as I always mention, today's relevant gaming, which I believe began with the 8-bit NES days, when gaming was newer, and especially when we went from that first jump from the 8-bit days to the 16-bit generation, that was when graphics really did make the difference. I mean, that was a time in gaming where the controls and the ideas were so primitive that one of the few things you could expand upon at that time were the graphics. When you went from 8 to 16-bit, those numbers instantly clicked in our brains, and we instantly saw the difference when we saw what Super Mario Brothers looked like, and then Super Mario World looked like, and then we saw what Sonic the Hedgehog looked like, and Eternal Champions on the Sega Genesis, and the newer Contra games, and the newer Zelda games, and the newer and Super Metroid compared to the original Metroid. And we saw, what does it mean for systems to get better? That's what that meant. And we saw that a couple of times, and at that time, literally having better graphics could make a game better. It could make it a much more complete, better package. It could make it more fun to play. And that's continued throughout, and that does even still kind of exist today a little bit, but I think that as the generations have gone on, and especially with these last 3 generations specifically, the 6th gen, the 7th gen, and this current 8th gen, I think these have been the last few periods over this last decade where the importance of improving graphics has diminished when determining the ultimate quality of the games you're playing and the systems you're playing them on. And so going back to what I was originally saying before that little kind of tangent, is people still think that it's important. I think it's because it's really just all we've known for so long. But as much as someone will say, oh, the PlayStation 4 is the best because it's the most powerful, and look at these graphics and yada yada, what's interesting to me is if you really pay attention to the conversations going on, no one's really talking about graphics anymore. Yes, we'll mention when a game is really pretty and when it looks good, and I, of course, always do appreciate that, as much as I talk about how unimportant graphics really are to what determines a good game for me nowadays. That doesn't mean I still don't like a really pretty and a really good-looking game. Whether it's an extremely stylized kind of pretty, like, like Guacamelee and a lot of the 2D indie games that are coming out that are beautiful because of hand-drawn art style, or Rayman Legends, stuff like that. Or if it's something like what Gears of War is going to look like, and Uncharted, and Legend of Zelda, and all these things, where they're going to be like, the most cutting-edge tech of console and PC gaming, I still like that stuff, but I don't need it. I think, however, a lot of people, they're so used to having the conversation about graphics that they're not noticing that it's not really relevant or current to today's gaming. I think the Wii U and what Nintendo is doing is a perfect example. And now I know we all know that I am a huge Nintendo fan, so of course I was going to bring this up, but it's really relevant to what I'm talking about because the Wii U specifically is a system that did improve on the overall power of the previous generation, the 7th gen, but still didn't make as big of a leap as what its direct competition did or what the current generation of PC quality machines are able to do. You know, as much as I love Nintendo and as much as the Wii U is my favorite system, I still acknowledge the facts of this. However, what they've done is shown, and I think they tried this last generation with the Wii, and although I really did like the Wii, they didn't really accomplish this at that time, but I think that they're, you know, beginning to accomplish it now with the Wii U, and they're showing that if games can look good enough, that as long as they're amazing, i.e., Donkey Kong Country, Tropical Freeze, and Mario Kart, two very beautiful games that are also absolutely phenomenal and very well reviewed and well selling, that those games can be good enough. And yes, we have other really pretty games coming out for the other generation, or the other systems, I should say, sorry. I think about Destiny, and I think about, you know, like Advanced Warfare, Titanfall. These games that are really, really gorgeous. I think they're absolutely beautiful, stunning looking games. And I think that, I mean, I guess there's probably more going on visually than what's in like a Mario Kart 8 or a Bayonetta 2, but they don't look any different to me. They both look good enough. I feel like we're getting to the point where the difference in power is just not important anymore to determining a good game. I mean, just look at the simple fact that a game like Destiny, which, again, I love Destiny, but most people don't. It didn't review all that well, even though it did sell very well. It didn't review very well, and people are very down on that game. I think it's probably the best-looking game this year. And that game didn't review as well as a game like Bayonetta 2. That looks, to me, just as good, but, again, probably factually isn't. If you could break down, you know, what reflections they have on this kind of thing and what the anti-aliasing looks like and the polygon count is here and there, and this lighting effect isn't the same kind of bloom lighting as in that game or what, you know, I don't really know a lot of that jargon. I understand a little bit of it, but not, you know, I don't know the fine details. And I'm sure that, you know, on paper, it might not be as technically impressive, but it absolutely gets the job done. I think it looks about as good as Destiny, you know, and it's, if anything, it's good enough. I feel like we're to the point where if games could look as good as, you know, like I said, the really good hand-drawn stuff like Rayman and Guacamelee. I don't know why those are the two. Child of Light, other games like that that are coming out right now that everyone loves and that are gorgeous. If they look as good as those, and they look as good as other games like Bayonetta 2 and Mario Kart and Super Smash Brothers, you know, I feel like that everyone would be satisfied with that. I don't think anyone is going to be looking at that kind of visual fidelity, you know, the kind of prowess in the graphical kind of aspect that the Wii U has, and feel like that's not good enough. You know, if that's like the cap that we had in visuals for the next 10 years, people would probably not care if the games were good enough. Now, if the games aren't very good, of course, that's kind of a different story. But that kind of goes back to my original theories that I think we're at the point where games absolutely will be good enough even if we don't make any more significant leaps forward in visuals. When the next Gears of War and the next Uncharted come out, you know, those two games specifically, and I also think the Zelda and the next Metroid, so I don't want to leave Nintendo out of this discussion because their system is powerful enough to stand in this competition. So when those games come out, they are going to be some of the most perfect examples, the perfect expressions of the most power and the highest quality visuals that consoles can pump out. You think about Battlefield 5 and stuff like that on the PC as well. The PC, of course, also belongs here because it's always a step ahead of the consoles in power and visuals. So when you look at that list of games I just mentioned, they're going to come out and be the absolute best looking for each of their respective platforms. There is no doubt that, you know, Uncharted 4 will be the best visuals that the PlayStation 4 is able to put out. I have no doubt. That 15 minutes that we saw from PlayStation Experience to me was phenomenal. It gave me chills. Not so much because it was beautiful, even though it was, but because it just looked like a great Uncharted game. And that's the point I'm making, is that's going to be, if that's the best we had for all of our respective platforms, I don't think anyone is going to be sad, and I don't think anyone will be noticing. There will be the the conversations about, wow, Uncharted 4 looks amazing, and Gears of War is the best visuals we've seen on a console to date. And you will hear one or two sentences about these games that mention that, and that's it. That conversation is going to be over. And I do think this is a good thing. This is a positive upswing that I think the gaming industry is heading towards right now, if this really holds true like I believe it will, hence the Rob theories, you know. I think this is a positive thing, and a lot of people talk about if we're heading towards a gaming crash, and I think that it is incredibly likely. But if this swing and the visual style and how people consider these things continues the way it is, I think it will help keep us out of the gaming crash that we might actually be heading towards. And it's because we won't talk about graphics that much when Gears of War comes out. Yes, you might hear that one sentence, it's absolutely stunning, but then the rest of the conversations and the rest of like a written review, for example, I think are just going to be about what the game actually plays like, what it's adding to the lore. Are the characters good? Is the action good? Do the controls feel great? Is the online functionality worth it? Does it suffice for what the series had previously put in place? Things like that. And honestly, reviews are mostly that way now, which is what sparked this. Is yes, people think they want to fight about the PlayStation 4 is amazing because it's the best visuals, and the Wii U is a piece of shit because it has the least best visuals. And it's like, people talk that way, but then they never discuss that aspect when talking about the games they like. It's not, games aren't being shown to make us feel like, play The Order 1886 because it's the best graphics you've seen. They're trying to sell you on the world, the immersion, the characters, the story. And that is, again, a good thing. And I feel like there was a period, around the 6th and 7th gen where that wasn't the case because we were getting to this new HD visual capability with graphics. And these new games like Gears of War and stuff like that really were changing the face of gaming and changing the way we thought gaming could go forward, the way it could advance. And I think that, like I said, a lot of reviews and a lot of conversations now really aren't discussing whether or not these visuals matter. And a lot of this conversation, I will admit, is coming from my own personal perspective. And I'm not trying to necessarily convince you or convince anyone of this, to agree with me. I'm really just sharing my theory and wanting to spark the conversation and the idea for you within your own mind. And if you want to talk with other people online or on the comments in this video, that is more than okay. But I really just want you to think about it. That's kind of what I want this series to be. And when I think about this topic specifically, that's what it is to me. And I'm at the point, like I said, if a game never looked better than Bayonetta 2, for example, ever again, but it looked that, if that was like the best games could look, I'm more than okay with that. I feel like games will still continue to get better provided companies like Nintendo continue to try to do other innovative things with, controllers that have never done something like this before, and, trying to have the user interface different and just exploring new game ideas and new game themes. Whether you're going more adult or you're going more abstract, I mean, there's so many different aspects that you could kind of explore with gaming. And provided that stuff doesn't go away, I want more crazy gaming experiments like what Journey was. Because I thought Journey was pretty good. It wasn't amazing. It wasn't Game of the Year to me. But I did really enjoy it. And I think that it deserved the praise it's got for its creativity and its uniqueness. And I want games to keep doing that. And the indie gaming scene is exploding. So I don't think we're going to have any dearth of new ideas. If games could keep doing things like that and look as good as Bayonetta 2, which is probably the second or third, maybe the third best looking game I've seen this year, then right on. I am good. Like visuals, again, I grew up when visuals were the most important thing. And it was all about what's the best looking system and the best looking game. Oh my God, we're playing games on CD. Oh my God, look at Mortal Kombat. They're actual people digitized for a fighting game. Oh my God, look at, Night Trap and Sewer Shark on the Sega CD. It's like an interactive movie. I was playing all that stuff, man. And it was all great at the time. And I loved the jump in visuals from the 8 to the 16-bit and the 16 to the 32-bit. And then, Ocarina of Time and Mario 64, those are half as memorable and revolutionary for gaming because of their visuals, because that was so new at the time. There's not a lot new that we can do with graphics. I feel like the 7th generation kind of capped where we could go with visuals, and now we're just refining small, minute details. And these details are going to get more and more minute as the power and the generations go on, and there's just going to be nothing else we can do. So we really just need the creativity of the games, the game designers, the developers, the console manufacturers, and the controllers that we're using and the interfaces that we have to make games better, not visuals. So, in conclusion, after my almost 15-minute, rant about this crazy theory of mine, I think that that's the conclusion I have to come to. Yes, I think graphics have lost a lot of their importance. Not all of their importance. I guess I don't want to be too crazy. They matter. A good-looking game is important, and at least a game that's got the visual capability that doesn't hold the game back from being great in its own right. And the great thing is that can mean a lot of different things, especially when you look at the indie scene. The fact that games like Shovel Knight and Nidhogg can come out with very simplistic graphic styles and still be considered among the best in their class and the best of the entire year shows that it's really about what you're doing visually for the game you're making. Provided that stuff continues and people can stop fighting over this system is so great because it's powerful, really, no one gives a shit. And we are going to give less and less of a shit as the years and generations go on. That's my theory. That is my opinion. That is my personal prediction. So I think that's it. I definitely, of course, want to hear what you guys have to say. I'm trying to spark a pretty deep, intellectual kind of conversation and, like I said, thought within your own head amongst your gaming life. Whether or not you discuss it is fine, but I just want to, plant that little seed in your brain and have you kind of think about what it is I'm getting at. But, of course, I do still want you to discuss in the comments below or amongst your friends. Share your thoughts about this. Does any of this make sense? Does it resonate with you? Do you think I'm crazy? It's just a theory, just a prediction, and just my personal opinion. Again, I'm not trying to persuade anybody, just trying to present my opinion. And I think that's really the gist of my theory. So who knows, man? I guess we'll see as the next couple of years and big titles come out for the current gen and what happens with the next generation. I think that's going to be a really telling sign once we get to that point. So anyway, that's it. Thanks for tuning in to my first episode of Rob Theories. Feels pretty good to get this first one out because it's been bumping around in my head for a couple months, like I said. So thanks for tuning in. Please feel free to subscribe to Rule of Two Review if you are new to the channel. Share your comments and your thoughts about the idea below, like I said, and I'll catch you guys on the next video for Rule of Two Review.